What's up guys, TechLab here. In a recent video we took a look at Arctic's latest all-in-one cooler, and along with that one they actually sent us one of their latest air coolers as well. These have only just been released and they are called the Arctic Freezer 36, and today I thought we'd take a look at it and just see how good they are. Now, as you guys know, I'm not a fan of air coolers, but recently, the more that people have been sending me, I'm actually starting to come along to them. The one that they've sent us across today is the Arctic Freezer 36 ARGB in white. They do them in all different colours, different types of models. They come with twin fan systems on them, and like all Arctic products, they're actually going to be fantastic. You just know that they're going to be. We're going to have a look through this one anyway, just to kind of see, you know, what kind of new things have they got aligned for us. Just like their new all-in-one coolers, they have got a new packaging. This is black and white, just like the cooler was, instead of their original blue. But if we actually just scan through some of the actual specifications on the back, when it comes to socket compatibility, they do only support the Intel LGA 1700, AMD AM5 and AM4, just like the new all-in-one coolers as well. That was actually commented on quite a bit by people from the last video that we did on the liquid cooler, because a lot of people still wanted them to be able to support older kind of sockets, but apparently it looks now like Arctic are actually moving ahead. They're actually just going to be supporting the most common and newer stuff. So unfortunately, if you do have something old, you're going to kind of be out of luck with these kind of things. It does come with MX6 thermal compound, just like the liquid cooler as well. And it is a single tower heat pipe system with aluminium fins. So that means it is a single tower, but we're going to have a dual fan configuration sat on it. That's going to be a push-pull configuration. For the heat pipes, there are 4, which are 6mm direct touch heat pipes. It's not the biggest kind of air cooler out there. There are many out there that really come with 6, and they're kind of more or less your high-end stuff, but it should be perfectly fine for what this is capable of. For the fans, we do have 2 P12 PWM PST ARGB white fans. So they are 120mm white fans with ARGB lighting, so they're going to look pretty cool. I don't really have that many white products at the moment, so it's really good that they sent this one across, because I really do want to do a white build, and this is going to give me that opportunity. The fan speeds do run between 200 and 2000 RPM, just like the fans on their all-in-one coolers. They have a fluid dynamic bearing, again, just the same as pretty much all Arctic fans. And they come with a 4-pin PWM connection with a 4-pin socket, so that suggests it's going to have a pigtail system on it. And of course, when it comes to the ARGB, according to this, the fans do have 12 ARGB LEDs. I assume that's 12 each, so that should provide enough lighting. And of course, the connections on them are 3-pin 5-volt connections, so they're going to be able to plug into a pretty standard connection there. But I haven't actually opened this yet, so I don't know exactly what's in there. Are they going to come up with some crazy new mounting system? I just don't know yet, but let's just crack straight in and take a look. Now, unlike some other air coolers that I've actually had recently, these ones are packaged extremely well. They're very, very tight into the box, so there's not going to be any damage, or there shouldn't be any damage on them. We'll start pulling things out here. Of course, there's the cooler itself, still packaged up with its cardboard. We have an extra fan here, and then there are extra pieces as well. We've got a bracket or something inside here. We'll pull that one out, so I'm not sure what that is yet. And then in the other side, we've got all of the pieces that we need to be able to fit it to something. That does apparently seem to be everything that you get. And like I say, the box is packaged quite well. There's lots and lots of packages in there. But now, before we look at the accessories, we'll take a look at what the main unit really looks like. This is a fan that, of course, is going to go on either the back or front. It does come with some screws. I'm not sure what they're for yet, but they do come with some screws, as if you're going to mount it to a case. We'll dig into that in a bit, but the fans actually generally look really nice. There's no kind of fancy ring systems on these or anything. You just get ARGB lighting from the center, and then they do have this extra piece around the side, which kind of goes with when people kind of do real quiet fans. That's a little bit different to what you got on the all-in-one cooler, but they do look really nice, and the blades are transparent, so the lighting's going to actually shine all the way through that. When it comes to the connections, for some reason, the connections do actually leave the fan on the back in separate places. It's the first time I've ever seen that with a fan. Usually they all just come out the same side, but this one they've decided to go for 2 different sides, which is a little bit weird. But again, for the connections, we've got some pretty decent stuff here. We've got a 4-pin PWM connection with a pigtail. I love it when they actually do that, because it means you can really kind of cut down on the amount of wires that go the full length of the case. You could just connect them all together. And it's pretty much the same for the ARGB. We have a 3-pin 5-volt connection with a pigtail as well. That I really like that. I think more brands should definitely keep doing that, because more and more are doing it nowadays, and it's really good to actually see that. The other fan is going to be exactly the same, so we do have a second fan here. This one is exactly the same as the other one. pretty much exactly the same fan. There's going to be no issues here at all. And then we come to the main unit itself. We just pop this little bit of cardboard out there. We can see that it's actually a pretty nice build quality here. It's very square. Everything's quite thick. These are not as bendy as you would think they are. And if we actually just look at the end, we do have a nice white plate, so you don't see all the kind of heat pipes. We have a nice white plate with an Arctic logo. And of course, looking at it, there is no actual brackets for these fans. I can't see them in anything, so I'm kind of guessing that it is something to do with these screws. If we just actually take this here and have a look at how that goes over, and that's actually pretty cool. Inside of here, we do have some little pegs here where the screw heads from the fans themselves actually do just click into each corner. That actually makes it look super clean when you're looking at the kind of fan side here. There's no fancy clips on the sides or anything like that, and it's going to give you a real clean look when it's inside a case. That's actually quite novel. I've never seen that before on a product, so Arctic are really kind of pushing the boat here when it comes to innovation. We saw that in their liquid freezer, and we're kind of seeing it now on their air cooler as well. But that is the cooler aside there. We will get back to it when we start fitting it onto something, but let's take a look at the accessories. We do get a little accessories bag, which is of course got our thermal paste in it. We got a nice little tiny tube here of thermal paste. That is MX6. I still haven't tried the MX6 from the last one, so I don't know if it's any good. I generally use MX4 for anybody that knows. You get an extra logo. I'm not sure what that's for. Maybe it's for sticking on your case, or if something comes off of a fan, maybe you want to stick it on the back of a fan if the fan is facing the wrong way. I'm not quite sure, but you do get an extra logo. We do get these two brackets here. These are going to be for the AMD platform, just like they were on the liquid freezer. They're literally going to just mount down onto the board, and then the cooler is going to mount down onto them. We will actually use them because the board we're going to fit this to today is an AM5 board. And then inside of here, we get some extra pieces. We get some extra screws. I'm not sure what they're for yet. We'll have to look at the manual. And then we get some extra screws and extra little stands and stuff like that. We also get one of these little key kind of locking screw thingies that we got with the other cooler. So I'm kind of guessing that the mounting system here is going to be identical to the liquid freezer. And that is probably what this is going to be here. For those of you that didn't watch that video or haven't actually looked into any of this, the Liquid Freezer 3 actually comes with its own contact plate for LGA 1700 systems, and this one does too. So this is basically a contact plate from Arctic. You take off the current mechanism that's on your board for holding the CPU down, you replace it with this, and then basically the cooler is going to screw down to that. We're not going to be using that today because we're not going to be fitting it to an LGA system, but I do actually love this kind of design. I thought it was fantastic in the liquid freezer. It does mean for anybody out there that has a contact plate, this is another one of them big complaints that I got from the last one. If you already have a contact plate and you've already bought one, you have to replace it. So you kind of wasted your money a little bit there. But generally, I don't think it really matters, because when you do move from one item to another, sometimes you have to replace things like that as well. So it's just nice that they actually include it, and they work perfectly fine. Now that we've taken a look at everything here, what we need to do is get a board, and we're actually going to mount it down and just see how easy it is. We're going to be using an AM5 board, so I'll quickly just grab one of those. Now the motherboard that we're going to be using is this one. It's a very basic AM5 motherboard, and it currently has 8600G in it. I was recently using this for one of the videos. We were doing some benchmarking with that CPU or APU. And I thought while it was out, we could actually get it up and running and get this cooler on there. It was actually sitting on our test bench, but I've obviously knocked that off. And the first thing that we need to do is remove the two clamp brackets here and here. This is actually very simple for anybody doing this. You just basically undo these screws. They go into the back plate, and you just take the brackets off. Now with this kind of setup, we do need to obviously have these brackets here, and we will need the extra screws and the little pegs too. These pegs generally go over the top of the backplate pegs, so make sure you don't lift the motherboard up here, otherwise the backplate will fall off. It's going to be very difficult to fit these kind of things inside a motherboard that's actually inside a system, and I do think that there was quite a few people actually mentioning this when they were talking to me about the Arctic Freezer 3s, because it's a little bit of a pain if you're doing it that way. The best way to do it really is to take the motherboard out, but of course that's extra work. For our case, we don't really need to do that because the motherboard's already out, but we basically just screw these brackets down just like this. And then of course with the brackets installed, we obviously need to kind of install some thermal paste so that they can obviously transfer heat to the cooler. So we'll get some thermal paste on there. I'm not going to use the MX6 for now. We'll get some thermal paste, we'll use some MX4 or something, and then we'll of course get the cooler installed. With our thermal paste actually installed now, we need to install the cooler. The one thing I don't like about AM5 CPUs is the fact that you're going to get thermal paste everywhere. It is a little bit of a flaw in their nightmare design, but it's fine. You can clean it up with a little cotton bud. On the bottom of the cooler, you've of course got this little sticker here that says warning remove. You do need to take this off. If you don't, you're going to have heat problems. Lots and lots of people accidentally forget to take these off, but you definitely need to. And then of course, you just need to kind of screw this down onto the actual plate. This one is actually going to go this way round because I want the logo facing down. You will want that in your system. If you fit it the wrong way, you're going to have to take it back off again, although it does look like you can potentially take the plate off. I'm not quite sure. There are some screws on it, but for now we're going to install it properly. They just simply go down onto the screws there. So the screws will actually just line up against there, and then using our long screwdriver, better if you do have a long screwdriver. We have one here from Noctua. It's pretty cool, to be honest. You should definitely invest in one of them if you're fitting coolers on and off all the time, just like we are. But you just kind of just screw it down. It does actually only have a 2-point system, so you want to make sure that it goes down evenly. It's not a corner to corner kind of thing. So it's just a couple of turns on one side, a couple of turns on the other, until it actually kind of really bottoms out. They are spring loaded, so you can't really overdo these, but generally if you're fitting coolers, you kind of know what kind of pressure to really put down on them. So now with the cooler actually fit to the motherboard, we need to fit the fans. We're going to have a push-pull configuration. This is the front of the motherboard here. The fans, you need to make sure you pick up the right one, although you can just swap the screws around. By the look of it, you just unscrew them and put them in. The screws are actually going to just locate into the side of it here. This is actually going to be super easy to install when it's inside the system compared to the old clamps. So at least they did that one, although, you know, just trying to fit the cooler itself is going to be a pain to get into the system. But I'm just going to click that one onto there. They actually just mount up perfectly fine there. Then we have the second fan here. I'll just have to unravel the cabling off this one. And that one is going to mount into the back and do the pulling. I'm going to try and get the cables to the top of the motherboard, as you should do if you are fitting a cooler like this, but it should just clamp on by just adding a bit of pressure and each corner going in. For the actual connections on this, I'm going to connect it up to the CPU fan header. That's going to be in the back of the motherboard here, and then I'm simply just going to pigtail off onto another one. So that is the two fans actually connected. This motherboard actually doesn't come with ARGB headers, so we're going to have to find something for that if we want to see some lighting. But I'll find a little controller, we'll plug it into the power supply, and we'll get the lighting working as well. Now the cooler is up and running and it worked perfectly fine. Both fans are actually spinning. They're using the pigtail system, and we've connected to a little bit of an external ARGB kind of controller for now, and we've got a bit of rainbow light going on there. There were two things I noticed when I actually first turned this on. Number one, the RGB lighting isn't that bright. That is actually the brightest setting that we've got, and it doesn't really cascade into the blades very well. Although in the dark or inside of a case, maybe it does look a little bit better. The other thing is that it is super quiet. This is only using a standard fan curve from the motherboard. I've changed nothing on there. It should be completely default, and the fans are spinning. We are currently keeping that CPU at about 20 degrees. I'm not exactly sure what the ambient temperature is in here. It's probably about 18 at the moment. It's kind of fluctuating here between 19 and 20 degrees, so it's actually keeping it cool really well. And like I say, it's completely silent. I can't hear those fans at all. They're not going to be picked up by the mic or anything like that, so that's actually a good sign. To give it a bit of a test though, we've obviously got Cinebench running here. This is R23. It's not the latest one, but it'll be enough to get this thing kind of quite warm. For some reason, Ryzen processors do kind of jump up and down when it comes to temperatures, even the latest ones, which is really weird. It's now currently sitting at like 38 degrees. It was at 20 a minute ago, so I'm not quite sure what's going on. It's going back down to 20 now, but if we just kick off a bit of a multi-core one, we'll let it run for a while and we'll see what kind of max temperatures we get out of it. Now Cinebench on the multi-core test has been running for less than a minute, and we've already kind of shot up here to around 76 degrees. It's not really going above 77, 78 at the moment. It's kind of hanging around there. Of course, we're going to leave it to get a bit hotter. We're going to let the cooler soak it up, but the fans have spun up. I'm not quite sure what speed they're going at the moment, but they are still super quiet. I really cannot hear them at all. You can obviously tell the fan has kind of increased, but there's no weird noises from it. It's just a general kind of wind noise from them, so that's actually pretty impressive for the fans. The last air cooler I tested was a very good cooler. It was from Gillette and it performed exceptionally well. It was a twin tower system, so I expected it to, but the fans were not the quietest. These ones are way more quieter than that, but we'll leave the test running and we'll see what happens once it's soaked up some heat, see if it can actually maintain those temperatures for long term, and if it does, it's actually a pretty good buy, I think. Now we're coming up to the end of our first run with the multi-core test, and everything actually seems to be perfectly going well. The cooler has actually absorbed a lot of heat, it's all soaked it all up now, and the maximum temperature that we got here was around 80 degrees. It kind of held out there, but it is floating around 77, 78. That's pretty kind of normal for a new Ryzen processor. They are running pretty hot nowadays, so it's not actually that bad. There's no throttling or anything like that. The system's running perfectly fine, so it's kind of passed that test. And to be honest, that is probably the most severe test that you will actually have when it comes to doing a cooler. Of course, the better one is when we're gaming, because that's what we do now. So let's start a quick game and see what kind of temperatures we get. It is an APU, so we're going to be running off the APU, so performance is not going to be the best out there, particularly unless we had an external graphics card, but at least the APU gives us an opportunity to see how well this cooler performs when it's cooling kind of both the GPU and the CPU at the same time. Now, unfortunately, I don't actually have that many games on this system. We've only got this one, and it is Half-Life 2. It's not the most demanding game at all, so what I have done is actually kind of ramped up all the graphics. They're on the highest presets, and we're running in 4K. We know that this APU can run this game perfectly fine in 4K because we recently tested it, but let's just run through and see what kind of temps we get. Unfortunately, our little thing in the corner from MSI will not show us the temperature of the CPU itself, but it will show us the temperature of the built-in Radeon 7600M, which is pretty much the same temperature anyway. It's currently running at around 37 degrees, 38 degrees, so it's more than enough to play something like this, particularly when we're talking about gaming performance. But we'll run through a bit of the game and we'll see what happens as we go through. It is actually still maintaining that 38, 39 degrees. I'm not sure how long we're going to survive here because I don't have that much ammo in the game, but we'll keep fighting through and see what happens. Nothing is actually going above. It's actually dropped a little bit now to 35, so the cooler is actually keeping things pretty cool all the way through, and the fans haven't even ramped up that much. They've just not needed to really ramp up that much. Just kill these guys here just so we can there's another one there. No, it's an antlion, so we'll just hide behind this wall here. So the cooler hasn't actually needed to spin up that fast with when gaming performance. It's still currently running at around 39 degrees, so the fan curve profile on this motherboard is probably not a lot, to be honest, but it is super silent. But anyway, that's our look at the Arctic 36 cooler. I want to thank Arctic for sending it across and again trusting us to do a video on one of their latest products. I do really like looking at some of their stuff. I've used Arctic products for years in the past and they're pretty good, to be honest, and they come at great prices. These at the moment do have a great offer on them. They've actually got some real big discounts on them as part of their anniversary sale, just like they did on the freezers. So you can pick these up for nearly, I think the lowest one is around £16 if you're here in the UK, all the way up to like £20, which is an absolute bargain for a cooler like this, particularly the way it looks. I'm actually going to try and pick another one up at those prices, maybe a black one to kind of have the matching pair, and I can use them in builds going forward. And I suppose as always, I'll catch you guys in the next one.